Good evening and welcome to the May 24th, 2022 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission this evening, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on a sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt the meeting, please either switch it to the silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I'll ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary, Kathy Zarnecki, to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Buechner.
Here.
Mr. Faison.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly. Ms. Parakis.
Here.
Mr. Rahman.
Here.
Mr. Tagle.
Here.
Quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarnecki. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Mr. Rahman moves and Mr. Tagle seconds. Ready for the roll call.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Ms. Parakis.
Yes.
Mr. Rahman.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Buechner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from the May 10th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Ms. Parakis makes a motion. There's a second. Mr. Buechner seconds it.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Ms. Parakis.
Yes.
Mr. Rahman.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Buechner.
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the commission for an item not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we're ready for a public hearing. Public hearing, special use approval and preliminary site plan review, SP JPLN 2022-0016, proposed Automart Collision Center, north side of Maple Lawn, west of Crooks, the address being 1744 Maple Lawn, section 29, currently zoned IB, integrated industrial and business district, and Mr. Carlisle will do the presentation, I believe.
Yes, thank you. As the chairman alluded, this is for a collision center on north of Maple Lawn. It's not working. Thank you. So the application in front of you tonight is to convert an existing building. It's at 1744 Maple Lawn into an auto collision repair shop. Outside of new signage, the only change to site in the building is the applicant is proposing a new overhead door to service new service bays. Automobile repair is a permitted use in the IB district. However, because the site is within 300 feet of Somerset Apartments to the north, it's required to be reviewed as a special use. There is, I do note that there is also a small portion of IB zone parcel that's just north of this. It's in between the residential and this site, but it does still require special use approval. The site is outlined in red in front of you. To the north is multifamily and IB. To the south is IB, east is IB, west is IB. The uses range from, again, multi-family, 2 parcels to the north with office, light industrial, warehousing, kind of the surrounding uses in that Maple Lawn area. If everyone's familiar, Maple Lawn is also home to a lot of auto type uses as well as automobile dealerships. So just for clarification of the site arrangement, the applicant proposes to reuse the building for 10 repair bays. They do note that there is some limited outdoor storage in the back of the facility. As I know, the applicant isn't proposing any changes to the site. However, there are a few things that we do recommend to bring the site more into compliance with our zoning ordinance. The first is repair and restripe the parking lot and provide the required barrier-free spaces, which were not shown on the views that we saw. Second, install bicycle parking. Third, install 2 street trees along the frontage. And lastly, indicate how they're proposing to screen the outdoor storage area, because that was not indicated on the plans. There are 6 required standards of automobile repair. These deal with issues of outdoor storage, which we note the applicant will have to store, minimum lot area, which the applicant does comply with, requirement that all equipment be stored within the building, which it will be, all maintenance activities be performed within the building, which it will be. Retail sales are those limited to carry out the vehicle repair. This doesn't indicate any retail sales. And lastly, anything within 300 feet be reviewed as a special use, and that's what we're doing here tonight at the public hearing. As the Planning Commission is very well aware, there are 7 standards that the Planning Commission applies with review to a special use standards. We do find that this does meet all the requirements of a special use, including 1, repurposing a building is the best management practice and promotes sustainability. 2, the IB district provides for a variety of uses, including automobile repair. 3, there are a number of uses around there that are similar in auto-oriented use along Maple Lawn. So the use of automobile repair is compatible with surrounding automobile, office, light industrial, and warehousing uses. And lastly, the repurposing should not require any additional public services than that would be required for a permitted use. So we do thank you for distracting me this whole time, Brent. So we do support the reinvestment of the sites, and we do recommend preliminary site plan and special use approval with the conditions that 1, applicant repair and restripe the parking lot and provide barrier-free parking. 2, provide the bicycle parking. 3, install 2 street trees. 4, screen outdoor storage area. And 5, just have the conditions that all work be done within the building as well as all equipment. Thank you.
Yes, Mr.
We had a technical issue with the clicker,
Okay, all right.
so it's sorted out, though.
We accept your apology. So. Any questions for Mr. Carla? Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Carla, I think you mentioned this, but I'm not quite sure I heard it. Is there going to be storage outdoors of automobiles needing repair?
The applicant indicated there is going to be some outdoor storage.
I'm sorry?
The applicant did indicate there is going to be some outdoor storage of vehicles. The location was not provided. He said behind the building, so our assumption would be in this general area. A requirement of the ordinance is it is screened, and screening was not indicated, but will be required if this does move forward.
You know, it seems to me several or more years ago, we had another repair facility. It was on 15 Mile, and the question was outdoor storage, and I think, if my memory serves me right, we did not want any outdoor storage in that facility.
Outdoor storage is permitted in this district and permitted with this use, provided that it is screened in some form of manner of a fence or a wall of something of that nature to be approved by the Planning Commission.
Yeah, so it might have been that they provided some screening.
Yeah, so it's again, as this moves forward, the applicant will be required to provide screening.
Okay. I'm satisfied.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Biegner.
Directly north and then in the back part directly to the west, what are those exactly? What parcel are we looking at?
Directly north, this parcel, this part is actually part of this parcel here. Kind of makes a upside down L.
Zoned industrial.
Zoned IB industrial, and this is the backside of this building. Again, this is also zoned IB industrial.
And the distance from their north line to the apartments is how
About 100, from property line to property line is about 160 or so feet. Let me pull out a little more. But from property line to building is probably 200 to 50 feet.
And then just so those of you who don't know, there's another repair shop just east of it, a couple doors down.
Yes, Mr. Faison.
There were a couple of comments on the landscaping and I think the lighting, which led me to believe that the property is not in compliance with the current zoning ordinance. There was a comment like for the trees that they would bring it closer to compliance. And for the lighting, if there was more changes, then they would have to bring the the lighting into compliance. I was curious why they don't have to comply with those two things.
So for lighting, since it's a reuse of existing building, a reuse of existing site, we don't require, unless they're making a change to the lighting, then they have to bring into compliance. We don't require them to go ahead and require them to make those lighting changes just by reuse of a building.
So the reason I asked the question is I thought one of the special use requirements said it had to comply with all the zoning, with the zoning ordinance. So is that consistent?
Yeah, and so I actually had this conversation earlier, and it's kind of the same line with landscaping. It's a
Right.
reuse of existing site. There's always a balancing act when it comes to zoning of reuse of a site. You want sites to become more into compliance, but you don't want the requirement to be so burdensome on the application that it actually discourages investment. So for example, one of the things they're deficient on is landscaping in the parking lot. If the applicant were to put in landscaping in the parking lot, it would require them to literally rip up pavement, reinstall curbing, reinstall landscaping, but also require them to irrigate it, so they have to run water lines. So it's not as simple as just simply removing pavement and putting in curbing and putting in landscaping. So there's other additional requirements. We have always taken the approach that when you reoccupy an existing building, we don't require you to retroactively go out and rip out parking spaces, et cetera. We try to get as much compliance as we can with simple things like putting in street trees and additional landscaping in front of the building. So we've never required people to rip out parking lot areas to put in additional landscaping if they're in compliance with parking as is. And we've not required people, just because they're not in compliance with lighting, if they're just simply reusing a building, we don't require them to come into compliance with lighting. However, if they do take out lighting or change out lighting,
Right.
it would be reviewed, it would have to become into compliance with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Mr. Tagle?
The buffer, the fence, is 6 foot? Is that the height? Is it, the ordinance deal with that?
It could be up to 8 feet high.
Is there a minimum?
Only as so much that it adequately screens what they're screening or trying to screen, but a maximum of 8 feet high.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, what is the deficiency with the lighting? Or, I say deficiency, what is it not in agreement with the ordinance?
I don't know because the applicant didn't supply a photometric plan, so I don't know what the lighting is out there.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll bring up the petitioner to present their plan to the commission and answer any questions. And make sure you sign in there on the form. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Lacashatis. This is Glenn DeRosier. He's my real estate agent and close friend, actually, customer. I don't have any plans other than whatever I've submitted. I don't know if you have any questions about the business or anything else I can present. I haven't done this before, so it's the first time for me, so not really sure what to expect. So
Problem.
here I am.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Parakis?
Well, I'll start out just by asking you, when you're going to install a new overhead door, where is that located on can you put the elevations up? And is that all you're doing, just one?
It would be, there's one door already, so there'd need to be one more door to kind of make a loop out of the building. So there's one in the back, and there'd probably be one on the east wall of the building, so I don't,
He's
Oh, sorry,
he's trying to get it
the
up
elevations
there, so-
weren't in the,
the building.
Well, I did
No
see
problem.
photographs earlier.
yeah, they're in our, there we are.
Yeah. So there's a overhead door in the back of the building, so on the north side of the building, and there's nothing on the side. So that opening on the very right of that picture, could become a overhead door or on the actual side of the building where you can't see it from the main road. That's in the back. So just to the east of that, on the east wall in the back. Right, yeah, right where that wooden fence is, right there somewhere.
Okay.
So it'd either be there or right where that hand is right now to the left.
Right.
Yeah, there, or where that other, I believe there was a overhead door there at one time, so, and they put a window in there instead.
Yeah, when we toured the building, it was fairly evident that this used to be an overhead door from when you go inside, so seems like a natural place for it.
Okay. And one other question was, I read somewhere about the screening, you're proposing 8 feet in height. When I drove over there were tons of trees. There was already a natural screen, like buffer between the residential and your property. So where are you putting a screen?
I mean, I would put screening around the whole fencing and then possibly do something, there isn't anything in the front, so just around the outer perimeter of the fencing all the way around.
On the sides even?
On the east fence, the north fence, and I believe there's a fence on the west side in the back that separates the other property to the west.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Tagle?
Those 2 box trucks at the very end of the property, are those, do you work on those types of vehicles? Are those your vehicles? Are your?
Oh, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I had 2 shops, and they're all premium repair facilities, so we work on more premium cars than other cars. So we're BMW certified, Mercedes certified, Sprinter certified, Subaru, Jaguar, Land Rover, and Rivian. This shop would be a smaller shop, so we would try to avoid tow-ins going to this location. It would be more of a support shop for the 2 larger footprints of our other shops, and they would do more of quick repairs, or something that's, a car wouldn't get towed in, a dilapidated car get dropped off, it would get moved to one of the bigger facilities. But we don't, at that location, we would not work on large vehicles like that. At my one shop, we have that ability, but not here.
So what height fence are you proposing to screen the
Whatever
vehicles?
fence is currently there, I think it's 6 foot, but it might be 8. I didn't pay that close attention to the height of that fence.
Well, definitely wouldn't want anything less than 6.
Yeah, well, it's definitely taller than me, so it's got to be at least 6. But yeah, I just would cover that all up and if necessary, put something in the front so you can't see back.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Sevena.
The note said limited outside storage. What can we expect? Like you mentioned, you're a smaller support shop. What a typical day? How many? What can we? If we go to the site, what do we see?
In the back, you'll see cars. I mean, the shop's is smaller, so the cars would be stored outside. Sometimes they might look like they're in, there might be parts missing off of them. In this particular instance, it shouldn't be like totally violated cars that are smashed really bad, and there should be drivable cars. So in most cases, they won't look like something's really bad, some real bad accident. Again, those should be towed to another facility.
6 cars, 8 cars?
Probably more like 20. The lot would be filled. If it wasn't filled, I would be in trouble.
Any other questions? Mr. Buechner.
Where are your other 2 locations?
Farmington Hills and Rochester Hills. We had a former location in Bloomfield Hills, but I lost the lease in that building, and that's why I'm looking for another location here.
And are you the tenant, not the landlord? Just checking.
I will be, Automark will be the tenant, yes, correct.
Any other questions?
Would it be okay if I said a few things?
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to clarify a couple of things. First, my name is Glenn DeRosier. I'm Senior Vice President with Friedman Real Estate. I've been a broker for next year my 30th year, 22 years with Friedman. I've known this gentleman for, since I was 18. I'm 52, so you can do the math on that. I think it's 34 years. I wanted to clarify one thing. When you say that you lost the lease, one of the main partners of this business is Winfried Dahm. You might know the dealerships Earhart, BMW. That is the Dom family. Okay, Earhart is Wynn's father. Very, very well known, and a lot of experience in the automotive world. Didn't lose the lease in Bloomfield. They sold the dealership to Roger Penske, Penske Automotive. And Roger has his own, and I can say Roger because I've met him and I know him, and my father designed his home, but he has his own automotive dealerships. It's one of the largest automotive dealerships in the country, his own repair facility. So when he bought Earhart BMW about 6 months ago, fair to
6
say,
months ago, yeah.
there was no more Automark allowed on site. So that is, I just wanted you to understand, it wasn't some lease violation or anything negative. It was a purchase and acquisition. So the other thing I want to say is that he's being very humble. This is a very, very well-esteemed repair facility. People come from all over the country to get their cars repaired here. I've had many cars repaired here. My family has. Not just as a client, it's just a phenomenal reputation. There was a time where Andrew worked for another company called Autometric Collision. Jay Leno sent his car there. So this is a very, very well-established. If you're in the car world, I don't know if any of you are car people, but this is where you want to go. So they're certified in aluminum repair, which is I think one of the only in the state, one of the only ones in the state. Aluminum-bodied F-150s or Land Rovers are all aluminum. They repair them. So I just wanted to let you know who you're talking to.
Thank you. You are too humble,
What was that?
I said I would have never said all that.
All right, any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, we'll have you take a seat and we'll open the...
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the commission on this item? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners. Would somebody like to propose a resolution?
I could do it.
Go ahead, Mr. Krent.
Resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Automart Collision Center north side of Maple Lawn, west of Crooks, 1744 Maple Lawn, Section 29, currently zoned IB Integrated Industrial and Business District be granted, subject to the following conditions. 1, repair and restripe parking lot and provide required barrier-free spaces. 2, provide bicycle parking. 3, install 2 street trees. 4, screen outdoor storage area. 5, all equipment including hydraulic hoist, pits, lubrication, and repair facilities shall be entirely enclosed within building. 6, all repair and maintenance activities shall be performed entirely within enclosed building.
Okay. Is that enough for the resolution? Anyone want to add anything? If not, yes, Ms. Kourakis.
Can we add the required parking spaces? I think you did the computation and had it at 35, so when it says repair and restripe parking lot and provide 35 required barrier-free spaces, so we're clear?
35, yes.
Are you guys fine with that?
Sure. Add it.
Mr. Tagle has a question before we...
There's not 35 barrier-free spaces required. There may be a total of 35 spaces required, and a percentage of that is required.
Yeah, 35 total spaces, and that includes 2 barrier-free spaces.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. I didn't, that's correct.
Somebody like to second the motion then? We'll let Mr. Rahman do it this time, so. Mr. Rahman seconds it. Any discussion on the motion? Just, I assume this is going to pass, and so we appreciate you reinvesting in Troy, and we'll look forward to all the new business that you're going to be bringing to that area there. So, ready for the roll call?
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion passes. Thank you. Congratulations. All right, next on the agenda, we're going to hear from the distinguished Director of the Department of Public Works for the City of Troy on the Troy Civic Center Pavilion conceptual design. So, Mr. Bovitz, go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you for the invite. I know some of you have seen this conceptual design, and I've given it a couple of times, but I continue to get excited about this project. I think it is a wonderful project to bring to the City of Troy. And this particular project, it's not something that I thought of. It's been in the work for years. As you know, we move through many plans, whether it be the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, whether it be the Green Space Subcommittee, and those before that have always identified the Civic Center campus as being civically orientated and should be kept as such. So recently, we constructed the Gene M. Stein Community Park, and the dedication will actually be Thursday at 4 o'clock. If you're available, it's going to be a great ceremony. If it does rain, we'll be hosting that inside the community center. But this idea of a pavilion really started grassroots with the Troy Community Foundation many, many years ago, who came to me and said, we want to do something big for the city of Troy. We want larger sponsorships. What do you think about a pavilion? And we visited several in this area. A funding opportunity became available from Congresswoman Haley Stevens. She called City Manager Mark Miller and said, hey, we're looking for projects. We're bringing back an old federal project program called Earmarks that's now the Community Project Funding Program. Do you have anything that we could submit for? We were very fortunate to be awarded $1.5 million towards this project. However, it was still just an idea. So we had to act quickly. During that time, we were acting quickly and coming up with the concept and doing the feasibility study. The residential survey was conducted through the city, and that came back that there was a desire in the community to have some additional winter sports, such as outdoor ice skating rink. So we thought, what a perfect opportunity to start incorporating that into our concept of the large pavilion. So we engaged OHM, like I said, to do the feasibility study. And OHM, if you're not familiar with them, one great thing about them is they always have guiding principles in any project they have. So we can always look to those guiding principles to make sure that we're on track. So here's just some of those guiding principles as we worked through the concept. And then we also looked for inspiration. So we looked at other areas. We visited many pavilions, as I mentioned, in this region. We also visited areas that hosted outdoor ice skating and indoor ice skating. We talked to those owners and organizations, talked to them what would they do differently, how would they design it differently, and what works well. And we had a tremendous amount of feedback, and that was all incorporated into our concept. So the location is Town Center and Civic Center Drive. If you're familiar with where the Kmart corporate head is, it's that corner. It would be an extension of the Gene M. Stein Community Park and provide additional amenities. So again, this is very high level. This is concept. We haven't decided 100% on anything, but this is what we're starting to work our design off of. So we have our ice skating ribbon. We didn't want to host hockey tournaments here. That's not the intent. It was intended to be family-oriented recreational opportunity. And we also wanted this to be a four-season facility. So when we were looking at the concept, we make sure that the pavilion can support 4 seasons, and so could the ice skating rink. So believe it or not, roller skating and rollerblading is gaining popularity again. In fact, just driving here, I saw a couple roller skating inside the Gene M. Stein Park, so that's something that it could be used for in the summertime, and other events as well. One of our guiding principles is making sure that the amenities are usable. So when we talk about lighting, we talk about bollards, they could also be sitting arrangements. So we want everything to be used and purposed well. And lots of lights. That it seems to be a common theme. We want the lights to be an attraction. The pavilion, it started when we started our concept. This is probably version 256, but we actually started with a full closed pavilion. And that was in conversations with Sterling Heights and Farmington, the city of Farmington, that they both said they wished they would have had a closed pavilion. So we designed a closed pavilion, and further discussions in the size and the funding that's available, we went back and thought, okay, they wanted a closed pavilion because they didn't think of how to heat it in an open pavilion. So as we're designing this pavilion, we will have radiant heat that will take the edge off the cold, but it is, if you're going to ice skate, you're going to be dressed for the weather. So we'll program this space based on the weather as well. So here's some conceptual views. This would be looking kind of southwest. If you looked through the conceptual view, you would be looking at the library. This would be the entrance, so the drop-off point, where people would get out and be introduced to the amenities. This is a further look into what the ice skating rink would look like. Again, concept, we wouldn't be looking at pavers. We would be looking at some material to be able to support ice skates and things like that. So this particular ice skating rink will be will be man-cooled. It will not rely on nature to cool it. It will have its own cooling system that will keep the ice frozen. And like the Gene M. Stein Park, this park also allows for a lot of expansion, a lot of what I call icing on the cake. We may not be able to afford the video screen on the Zamboni, where the Zamboni is stored right now, but we certainly want to design it for the future, where when funding becomes available, we can add that type of an amenity. A little further back, looking at the design and the feel of that pavilion overhang, if you notice that the pavilion, yes, it has an interior, but with the overhang design, it really opens up opportunity to program just outside of that pavilion as well. This is a look looking into the Gene M. Stein, the existing Gene M. Stein Park, so to the east. The landscaping, we plan on fitting in with the DDA re-landscaping design plan, and that theme is consistency through nature. So using a lot of native plantings, using a lot of natural stones that you would find in Michigan, but placing that in a consistent manner. This view here is right at the corner of Town Center and Civic Center, what it might look like. And then a winter shot that the arch there would be a lighting feature, a tunnel of lights, if you will, and kind of what it would look like at night. Although I don't think their program could do full winter because there's still leaves on the tree. But we have a very, very aggressive schedule. And I didn't mention that in addition to the $1.5 million we were awarded for the community project funding, the city intends to use 4.5 of its ARPA funding towards this project for a total of a $6 million project. So this schedule is very aggressive, and it has already been announced, so now I'm stuck to it. But the plan is that this will be fully operational in October of 2023. Council did approve a contract with OHM to start into our design work, so taking this concept into design. And we just had a meeting of, there had to have been 20 people. So OHM assembled a wonderful team to start on this project and very aggressive in the design process. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The intent of this tonight was to introduce the project to the Planning Commission because you'll likely see it again. So we wanted to make sure that you're aware that this is going on and eventually see an official site plan.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bovenseep. Any questions from the commission? Yes, Ms.
I have
Parakis.
some questions. I love it. I love the idea. It's beautiful, and I love all the detail with the lighting. I think it's going to add a lot. In terms of parking, are you planning on being able to use like the aquatic center or the community center? Because I know we talked about a drop-off, but where are people actually parking for this?
Sure. So, I didn't really mention that Troy's missing a downtown because I think everyone is aware of that. But with that downtown comes that feel of walking to the amenity. So we didn't want a parking lot directly next to it because we think it would detract from the amenity. So if I go back to, probably this one here. So we have parking, 64 spots in the Gene M. Stein Park near the skate park. To the north, when the tennis racket club isn't being used, we have about 75 spots there. The aquatic center, community center. Eventually, I would like to see the.
Bear with me, Kurt.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Yeah.
But eventually, I would like to see the original Thank you. The original design of the Gene M. Stein Park, the Phase 1, had a pedestrian bridge that connect that North Community Center lot directly into the park. So hopefully one day we'll be able to put that pedestrian bridge in across the county drain, and that would create another walking feature, closer feature to the community center parking. So the feasibility study suggested we have plenty of parking for this amenity, and you're just going to have to walk to it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was just curious as if you had to have an agreement with all those places or if it was just you're able to use that, but it sounds good. In terms of the skating and when people arrive, is that like free? Is that a service?
It will likely have some sort of rental charge if you need to rent skates. We have talked to Dennis Bostic, the owner of Troy Sports Center. We have talked to other ice management companies, and the idea is that we would contract out the rental and the maintenance of the ice skate because I'm not an expert at ice skating, and we have members of the community that are. So they would supply the skates, and there would likely be a charge to rent those skates. Yes.
Okay, but no fee to go and hang around there or to skate?
There
if
is-
you had your own skates?
The amenity is not designed to be able to take, there's no gates, there's no real entrance way, you can walk in from different points, so there's no intent at this point to have a fee to participate.
I noticed the thing about the concessions. What are the hours of operation of the park itself? And then how are you envisioning offering concessions in terms of time frame?
Sure. Concessions would probably be very similar to our other concession facilities at our parks, or Bolin Park and Firefighters Park, and then the Aquatic Center. So we actually took those concessions in-house because Recreation saw it as a revenue source. So concessions could be ran by the Recreation Department, and we would find peak hours to run those concessions, so it generates revenue. It's not a full expenditure on the city. The park hours, this is technically a park, so it is covered under the park ordinance, so it would be sun up to 10 p.m. or 11 with special permission.
Okay.
Mr. Krent.
Wow, this is great. It brings, I think, Troy into the 21st century as far as amenities. That said, I was on the Civic Center planning thing back, I can't even remember what year it was. Seems like 20 years ago. Anyway, I was in charge of the winter sports. And it was the thought back then, because we had an open drain then, and we had basically a little pond that's been covered over right now. The idea was to work on that pond, enlarge it to the point where it could be a skatable place, put in the cooling system, and actually divert most of the drain away from there, but allow it to gate in to flood it when needed. So we're going to use any of that flooding, or we use just city water?
That will be part of the design phase. I know we placed the Zamboni maintenance building next to the drain, so we can actually use that to dismount the ice and use the drain to carry that water away. So there is going to be a sustainability aspect to this project, so that will come up in design, and that's a great idea, is to use the current water flow if we can.
Yeah. And the other part of that winter sports thing, there's a hill that slopes down from the aquatic center down to what was the drain. We're going to have a sledding hill or not?
Maybe one day. I think, the idea of how we're building the Civic Center out, slowly, carefully, and always room for expansion. I think that we are going to continue to see this expansion in the Civic Center to civic use, because we are creating it so civically orientated, and people are going to start getting familiar with coming here and understanding that this is a place for recreation. So I only see this growing.
Great. Yeah, because we were going to use the concession stand in the aquatic center in the winter, and the lockers for changing skates and sledding gear, whatever. But it's nice to see that old dream come alive and way better.
Thank you.
Mr. Romley.
A wonderful idea, and thank you for bringing this. And I'd like to thank Congresswoman for connecting this with you. The question is, are you allowing any commercial vendor or anybody in this site, or it will be just for hot chocolate or coffee or some kind of snacks, so do you have any idea?
At this, are you speaking specifically for concessions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the design is being led by the idea that recreation will run the concession stand. So
Okay.
it's likely you won't see a Starbucks in that little space, or
But at least some hot chocolate and coffee and all
Yes,
these things,
yes,
especially
yes.
I know that, that will be very, very important for
Yes.
people, gathering there. Okay, so there will be something.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Faison.
I was just curious, so is the attraction, what we're seeing here, the rink and the space you're building, or are there going to also be events of some kind to attract people to the site?
I can see the potential of a lot of programming. So right now, if we talk winter, the attraction is likely going to be the ice skating rink. Outside of winter, our farmers market is going to be hosted inside the Gene M. Stein Park. I can see that growing into underneath the pavilion and having that feel. Maybe the open area will be the farmers, and underneath the pavilion will be your crafts, something to that effect. Programming-wise, I know there's a lot of interest. Troy Chamber of Commerce has interest of leasing the space during the day for outdoor events. You know, COVID has taught us that not everything has to be inside a conference room. So I think there's a lot of interest in the corporate community that this pavilion could be used for. You know, as silly as it may sound, we might, you know, the ice skating track could host a RC car race event, you know, for kids. It just presents so many opportunities that I think the Recreation Department will take off and run with it. They're very excited. Parks and Recreation Board is also very excited for this project.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Tatel.
Yeah, I think it's a great start. I like the concept plan. One thought I'd suggest you take back to the design team to consider. I noticed the picnic tables are kind of off to the side, more oriented towards the road or the street. Maybe if that was more landscaped and those tables were actually brought in so that people sitting there could watch people skating or whatever they're doing in that, whether it's ice skating or roller skating, so to bring them back into the kind of the core of the development.
Great suggestion. Yes, I'll definitely bring that back. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Takel. Good idea. Any other questions from the commission? Yes, Ms. Parakis.
I know you said that the idea is going to grow, and you mentioned a screen at one point. Are you envisioning maybe outdoor movies throughout the summer, and maybe bringing in food trucks and things like that?
The proximity to the Gene Emstein Park, food trucks over there, absolutely. We designed that to be able, a portion of that park to be able to support vehicles. So they can actually almost pull up to the drop-off zone here, and that could host the food trucks. My vision is almost endless, because and that's been our theme as we design this project. Is we don't want to stop anywhere. We want it to be able to host just about anything. So anything you can imagine, my hope is that this space will be able to host it.
Because the fire pits were I thought I saw some fire pits, or at
Yes,
least one.
yes.
So that's, I mean, these are all things that will attract people to come and stay and hang out, and I mean, I think it's brilliant.
Thanks. Interesting lesson learned with the fire pits when we were talking with Sterling Heights. They placed their fire pits too far away from their padded walkway, so no one on skates could walk to the fire pits, so no one used them. So just interesting tidbits we're learning from other communities on how to make ours the best.
Yes.
Any other questions? I was just going to mention my late father was, many years ago, the manager of Munn Ice Arena at Michigan State, so I know what a challenge trying to operate an ice arena is, especially outdoors. So I'm glad to hear you're thinking about having an outside contractor kind of manage it, because it can be a real headache for people that are not aware of the challenges of dealing with Freon and all the other stuff that they have to use. And also, I love the design because of the fact that you're creating a feature that the public can use, but we're not competing with Dennis Bostic down the street. It's a totally different type of an ice arena. So I think this is a great amenity. So I think we're all in agreement this will be a great asset to both the Civic Center and the city. So
Thank you.
any other questions? So as I understand, we're not actually formally doing anything tonight. We're going to wait for Mr. Bovenseat to come back with an actual site plan for us to look at. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Me too. All right, next on the agenda is a preliminary site plan approval, file number SP 2019-0041, proposed Langview Estates, southeast corner of Livernois and Latonia, 4080 Livernois, section 15, currently zoned NN neighborhood node, Node H district. Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, thank you. As a little background, I believe this is at least the second, I believe perhaps the third time the Planning Commission has looked at this project. The subject site is located on the east side of Livernois, just north of Waddles. It's approximately 1.62 acres, and right now it's improved with a recently renovated 7,000 square foot one-story building. The property is zoned neighborhood node with multifamily residential, and the applicant is proposing multifamily residential, which is a permitted use in this district. It's adjacent to single family to the northwest, north and east, and neighborhood node to the southwest and south. The applicant proposes to incorporate 8 townhomes, which are kind of outlined in that yellow orangish color just north of the existing building on site. These would front on Latonia, as well as kind of at the corner there, as well as Livernois. There is a third parcel, which is the south. It's got that tree in the middle. It, at this point, has not been proposed for development. If it would come in for a site plan in the future. All vehicular access to the site would be via Livernois Road. One of the items that's come up for discussion at the previous meeting was that of height. It does meet all the area and bulk requirements. However, there has been discussion on height. The proposed height of the townhomes, as indicated on the site plan, is 34 feet 10 inches to the midpoint. That's how we measure height in the zoning ordinance, and 39 feet to the peak. The maximum height in the adjacent residential neighborhood is 30 feet, and most of the homes on the neighborhood and directly across the street in Latonia are ranch homes, and the existing office building is a one-story building on the same site. This is the picture of the site in some context. At the meeting on February 23rd of last year, there was discussion on the height, and the applicant had made some indication that they would look at reducing that height. We do think a building height of 2 or 2.5 stories would be a more appropriate transition from the single family that kind of outline the existing location of this particular building. So in request, we are asking that the applicant describe how the 39 feet and 3 stories would be an appropriate transition in light of the standards that we have in our form-based districts. With regards to parking, the site, in particular the office site, is overparked. It exceeds the 20% minimum requirements that the applicant is allowed to overpark a site. The total required parking is 40 spaces. With an excess of 20%, that would get up to 48 spaces. However, the applicant is asking for 59 spaces, so that exceeds the parking that can be permitted without approval from the Planning Commission. So with that, there are 3 options. One is to simply reduce the number of spaces on site. 2, receive a waiver from the Planning Commission, or 3, land bank some parking and build in the future if deemed necessary. In addition, these are 2 different uses, and so there would be a shared parking agreement would need to be recorded if this were to move forward. With regards to landscaping, the applicant did provide a complete landscaping plan. We note that they are deficient from 3 parking lot trees that are located within the parking lot. We also note that the applicant has indicated trash enclosure screening, but did not indicate what that material or how the type of screening would take place. The applicant is providing a photoretic plan that includes 4 pole-mounted lights. We do note that they do meet the ordinance requirements with regards to fixture and photometrics, but we do have one that's highlighted in that red. It's just kind of in the middle of the parking lot, unprotected, and so we think there should be a better location for that to protect that in the future. The applicant has provided floor plans and elevations. The elevations have changed slightly from the ones that you last reviewed. They do show some detail in architectural variation and materials. The materials appear to be brick and siding. However, the details of what those materials were not provided. So we do ask that the Planning Commission consider and discuss the architectural material. This elevation in front of you is the elevation that would front on Latonia, and the elevation on top is the side elevation that would front on Livernois. The elevation on the bottom is the rear elevation with the garage that would kind of back up to the office building, and then the side elevation is the one that faces north. This is the elevation from Latonia and kind of the corner of Latonia and Livernois. This is a rendering of the back of the building from, it looks like this would be from Livernois. There are standards that the Planning Commission has to review this. There are 4 in the design standards, and there are 3 in the site plan review standards. I'm going to focus more on the 3rd standard, the site plan that includes transitional features, or I'm sorry, 3 of the neighborhood node standards, and that includes transitional features, and there's 5 of them. The first is that transitional features are architectural elements, site features are alterations to building massing that are used to provide a transition between higher intensity uses in low or moderate density residential areas. 2, a continuum of use intensity where moderate intensity uses are sited between high intensity uses and low intensity uses shall be developed for multi-building developments. 3, building height and mass in the form of building stepbacks, recess lines, or other techniques shall be graduated so the structures with higher intensity uses are compatible in scale with adjacent structures or low intensity uses. 4, primary building facades should be placed away from residential use. And 5, similar size and pattern architectural features such as windows, doors, arcades, plasters, etc. Shall be included on lower intensity use to incorporate in the transitional features. These are the standards that we are asking the Planning Commission to consider when they consider this application before you tonight. So overall, we do think a townhome development could be appropriate use of this site. However, we do recommend the Planning Commission to consider the issue of transitional features and height, and particularly the impact of this massing on the homes in Latonia and the transitional feature from one-story office, three-story townhomes to one-story houses surrounding it. And based on that discussion, and if the Planning Commission does recommend site plan approval, we recommend with the conditions that the applicant record a shared parking agreement, obtain a parking waiver from the Planning Commission, remove parking or land bank parking, provide trash enclosure details, provide 3 additional street trees, and relocate parking lot light in the middle of the parking lot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, part of the design standards require transparency requirements, and I didn't see you touch upon those. Can you let us know if they've?
It's a good point. It's a good question and it's a good catch. They are, because it's a 4-based district, just because they're residential, they still need to meet the transparency requirement. This elevation in front of you, you can see the bottom row, we measure it from 2 to 8 feet in height. It's really close to 50%. I haven't measured it, but if it's not 50%, we'll have to meet that, and so we will make sure we measure this if this application does move forward.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Seeing none, we'll bring up the applicant. Good evening. Make sure you fill out the form there to give us your name and address.
Good evening, thank you. Another time at the Planning Commission, third time go around is always fun. So I know you guys have struggled a lot with this project with regards to the element of design and also the height of the design. And I think everybody's aware of the fact that in today's world, economics are a key component to developing properties today. I just want to kind of go back in history a little bit. I purchased this property approximately 4 years ago and with the intent of developing the property under the neighborhood node district. The building that I presently occupy with my corporation and 2 other uses is the old original truck post office. When I first looked at the property, my plan was just to demo everything and start over. And after further consideration, I decided that's not the right thing for the community. I thought it was important to keep some of the old history that this building represents. 1958, it was designed and built for the U.S. Postal Service. And I think if you've had a chance to come by my facility, I think you see we've done a fabulous job, even if I am biased. Spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of my own energy in that facility and really putting forth a project that I think I can be proud of and I think the city can be proud of. I'm a resident of this community. I've been and had my business here for over 30 years. When the neighborhood nodes first started in this community, they were designed to bring orphan properties to the tax rolls. It's basically, from a developer's concept, what it was all about. These vacant parcels of land are just that. Very difficult to develop by themselves. Can't build them as single-family homes because they're not zoned for single-family homes. The dimensions, the logistics for the property don't allow for that. You start to reduce the height of the building, you start to reduce the economics and the value. And it's more difficult to market and promote. These are really designed for first-time home buyers. Affordable housing for this community. We're on the walking path. We've taken all that into consideration. Great new ice facility. We'd like to market that as a part of our facilities. Families want to be here. You can walk there from here. I think it's a fabulous idea. But the whole basis of the neighborhood node concept was to bring these properties to the tax rolls. That's what this will do. Gary Apitheria is the builder. He'll be working with me on the project. We own the property. We own both sites, and we intend to develop the south side also. What we're going to do there, we don't know. We're waiting to see what shows up and what possibilities are presented to us. At this point in time, Gary has informed me, because we've been working very closely to try to lower these buildings to still make them marketable and economical. Gary's told me tonight that we could reduce it by about a foot at the midpoint, and we've additionally reduced what would be the eastern building by a foot due to elevation standards and pockets. Relative to the height and the parking in the surrounding area, we did a self-analysis over there. Everything on Latonia, actually over 95% of the homes over there are 2 stories. I have gone out personally and met with all of the single-family residential people that I directly affect. I don't believe anybody here tonight is either in favor or is opposed to the project. So for my benefit, I think everybody's in favor. I've had no negative response at all. People that I directly affect have become friends of ours, communicate with them, we show them our plans, we talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to upgrade the site. A couple of key elements that I think that didn't get touched on is we provided more green space against the adjacent home right behind us. We don't have to be, we could be much closer to that property, but we've pulled ourselves off of that property. We're going to, as a part of the process, upgrade both intersections coming into the property to today's standards, and in addition, add these properties to a stormwater management program, which it doesn't exist today. Do you have other projects? Are there other properties in the area? To the best of my knowledge, the 2 most recent properties on Crooks, or on Livernois north of me, and on Crooks south of me, are fully occupied. There's definitely a need in this community for this type of product. People are buying it. They absolutely are buying it. The church to the north of us, which I know is a historical church, higher than we are. Across the street from me, the steeple at the church, higher. There's 2 other facilities over there that are higher. So I'm here to work with the Planning Commission to try to alleviate those concerns relative to transitions. But from our standpoint, I think we've reduced them as far as we can so that they're economical and feasible to build. I think I've touched on all my concern or all my issues. Is there any questions I can answer for anybody tonight?
Okay, anyone from the commission have a question? Yes, Ms. Parakis.
I'm wondering whether or not you've considered, instead of having parking underneath the building, that you just lowered the buildings by an entire story and just had detached parking, and you could cover it, but have it separate so you could not have a 3-story building.
First time I've ever been asked to bring parking out to the public eye versus put it in enclosed chamber. So and I'm a little concerned on the parking ratios and elements because I have 16 garage parking spaces, and so and then the remaining parking is to handle the overflow for visitors, and then to handle my building and the people that are in my building. So I have not the dimensions and the way the property works will not allow for it. I don't have enough depth to get enough parking in to cover. Still build the product. The width dimension does work with that, from Latonia to my building.
Ben, can you put up that picture really quick just so I can see the one with the parking?
Back, right there.
With site plan of the parking slide.
There was actually a picture, maybe a rendering, I thought, with the parking.
The rendering is...
Yeah, like that.
Okay, that's not actually, I apologize, that's not actually accurate. The architect did that. If you go back to the site plan, that is the plan you need to look at. Because you'll notice that the dimension between the garage door and then the curb line, can you go back one? Go back to the site plan.
The site plan?
Site plan, please. Right there. You see those parking spaces that are parallel?
I do.
Those parking spaces represent overflow, and they also service the existing building that we are in. And if you notice, if you take out the 16 parking spaces that are now occupied in those homes,
Right.
I don't have any room for them. Where would I put those 16 parking spaces? And in addition to that, where would I cover them? How would you get ingress and egress to the site?
So,
Well, from that one rendering, it wasn't accurate. It looked like there was a whole...
But, and I apologize, it's the architectural rendering that somebody placed on there.
Okay.
It's not, that part of it is not accurate.
I think, Mr. Pangle, the point the commissioner's trying to make is you don't have to replace those 16 that are in garages on the site. You're by ordinance, you're overparked by 19 spaces. So you simply just would have utilized the extra 19 spaces for at-grade parking for this particular use.
And I'm struggling with where 19 spaces over, because when I did the calculations based on the engineer did the calculations, there are 16 spaces that are in the total count.
Yeah, Mr. Pangos, in my report, I mean, you're overparked, the office is overparked by ordinance requirements based on the size of the office. So you only need 24 spaces for the office and 16 for the residential. That's 40 total. You've got 59 on site, including 16 in the garage. So it's the office that's overparked.
Any other questions from the commission? Yes, Mr. Buechner.
How busy is your parking currently in the middle property?
On my building, most days it's probably 3/4 full, if not more. I'd suggest you, and I don't, no disrespect to your planner, but my office building wouldn't work without that parking.
Parking's huge, we all get it.
It's an important feature, that's why it's behind the building, and that's why most of my parking is going to be screened, and that's why I put 16 other spaces behind closed doors. Less taking the surface for me. And it allows me not to go on, look for access off Latonia, bring traffic into Latonia in the neighborhood, and additionally, utilize the curb cuts that are existing. And those curb cuts have been modified, those are not standard.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Tagle.
One of the things that I find a little bit troubling about the planning, the first residence to the east is set back quite a bit from the road. Now, the site plan doesn't complete the footprint of the residence. It shows the back wall and part of the west wall. But the massing of the buildings, the most easterly building, is basically going to really overshadow that. Because it's way in front of the building and it's much higher than that building. And I find that really troubling. I tend to think that, maybe that first building, that building to the east, maybe reconsider its height again.
Well, I have brought that building off of the property line further than ordinance requires, so I've already given a green space requirement there, or increased the green space requirement over and above what is required by the city. In addition, I'd suggest I've met with those people and talked to those people. Because of the change in elevation, the fact that there'll be a screening wall there, they find that they've had no issues.
But you don't disagree with what my observation is?
Screened correctly? I'm not sure I can disagree with that. I think this project suits this property.
My point was that your buildings, and I can't tell how much further north they are than the first residence, but they are quite a bit further north than that first residence. And with the massing and the height that you have on these buildings, it's basically overshadowing and really not making much of a transition to that neighborhood.
Do note.
Any other questions from members of the commission? Seeing none, we'll have you take a seat, and
Thank you.
you're welcome. And it's not a public hearing, but if there's anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time, seeing no one wants to come up and speak, we'll bring it back to the commission for either questions or a resolution.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I was
Mr.
just going to say, I agree with Mrs. Parakis's point on the outdoor parking and the overparked nature of the current site. So if that is truly accurate, then I think that's a very valid point that could address the height of the building.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson.
Simply put, it looks to me, we have a one-story building in the middle, vacancy on the other side, and a proposed almost three-story apartment. I think it looks like Mutt and Jeff at that point. We're down to 2 stories. That is much easier, I think, transition-wise for this neighborhood. But 3 stories, 8 buildings in there, that is massing, and that is just going to jar the symmetrics, in my mind, of looking at this intersection. The other thought I had was, I think the developer indicated that the southernmost parcel may be developed in the future. But if I look at that site plan, we've got 2 entrances on Livernois, and the only way to transition that is through a parking lot. I drove that the other day, and I'd be a little leery about putting too many people in that area transitioning out to Rochester Road. As far as a shared parking goes, it may be available for some parking back there, but I would hope that any shared parking agreement not only reserves the right to park in those areas, but it's recorded so that there is a permanent easement through that parking lot to the 2 side streets coming off of Rochester. I hate to have it termed a license, which can be revoked at any time. If the owner decided it was a license, he could just say, I'm not going to license it anymore. I think we need an easement recorded with the county that's going to run with the land to ensure that if these buildings do go up, that there's going to be access in 1 or 2 different ways. 3 stories is too much. It's almost like we're putting too much in a short space. And I'd like to see a review of this again by the proposed applicant, maybe taking some of that into consideration and reducing some of this project.
Any other comments or, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Krent.
Well, I was looking at the transitional features, and 4 out of the 5 are clearly not met. So there's no way I'm going to accept it's like a sore thumb sticking out among low-lying buildings. So the height and mass and setback shall be graduated. There's no graduation there. It just goes from 1 story to 3 stories. Architectural features, similarly sized. Wow, not even close. Transitional features, architectural elements. It says here, mass alterations. Well, that doesn't really apply. Intensity. The continuum of use intensity, where moderate intensity uses shall be cited between high intensity. There's nothing in between. It just goes from single-family homes to 3-story homes. It just doesn't fit at all. It's to me like a sore thumb sticking out.
Yes, Mr. Rahman.
2 stories is the maximum that I can, 2 stories is the maximum that I can.
No, this was, if the planning commission aware, there was a zoning text amendment that reduced the height to 2 stories maximum. This was submitted prior to that. And so up to 3 stories is permitted under the grandfather use of this application. That being said, those transitional features and those design features were in the ordinance prior to submission, so he's still required to meet those requirements. But they can go up to 3 stories, provided the planning commission approves this project.
Any other comments, or does somebody want to make a resolution?
I'll just make one other comment. I mean, you've done a tremendous job with that, repurposing of the post office, and I think that it's a shame to actually put this big strip that blocks it and overshadows that beautiful building. I just don't see this fitting there at all. And if it's not, economically feasible, I hear what you're saying, but then maybe it's time to look at something different. But it does not meet the requirements of transition, and I wouldn't approve it either at that height.
Mr. Buechner.
I think a question for Mr. Savana. We had people in the city be against it, or we don't have anybody here saying that are against it? Have we had people come up and say that they're not in favor of it?
Excuse me. Battling allergies and a slight cold, so sorry. There's no public comment on this. Mr. Carlisle inches away from me. We don't have any public comment on record. This is, I believe, the 3rd time it's come before the Planning Commission. If there were any neighbors that were in opposition or were concerned, they can certainly follow along. We post all the agendas online for where they're available to be viewed or downloaded 24/7. I do accept Mr. Pengel and Mr. Abathura at their word. I've known them for a long time, and when they tell me that they've reached out to the neighbors, they've reached out to the neighbors. But I don't know to what extent, but if they're telling me they communicated with the neighbor to the east, then I accept them at their word that they have.
Any resolutions someone wishes to propose at this time? Go ahead, who's somebody?
All right, I'll do it.
Okay, Mr. Krent.
Resolved that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Lang View Estates, 8 units located on the southeast corner of Livernois. Is it the southeast corner? Did I see that? Okay.
Yep.
Southeast corner of Livernois and Latonia, 4080 Livernois, Section 15, zoned NN, Neighborhood Node H, District be denied for reasons that it does not meet the ordinance requirements for transition.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Tagle seconds it. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Mr. Faison.
Just a question. So if it's denied, is that the end of the project, or are we a recommending body? Or does it go beyond us even if we deny it?
This is a preliminary site plan application, so the Planning Commission has the ability, the authority to approve or deny.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, I guess we're ready for a roll call.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes?
Mr. Biekner,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes?
Mr. Hudson,
Excuse me, yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay. Motion carries to deny. And now we go on to public comments for items on the agenda. If anyone from the public would like to comment on an item on the agenda, Dale, do you want to talk to us or not? You're just watching us, okay. All right, next is Planning Commission comments. So I would start down there, so I'll start down over here, Mr. Carlisle, and on around.
Yeah, just a reminder, we have our third subcommittee meeting for the nodes tomorrow night. Hopefully we'll wrap up tomorrow night. If we don't, we would have potentially have a fourth, and then we would like to bring the recommendation and final conclusions of the subcommittee back to the Planning Commission as a whole for their consideration. Thank you.
Reminder to the public, anyone watching that wants to attend the subcommittee meeting, it's open to the public. The meeting will be at 6 p.m. tomorrow in the council boardroom, which is located on the other side of the building. Come one, come all.
Mr. Frame?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Mr. Tagle?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Mr. Rahman?
I'm good.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a place we can go to see an overview map of the new trail system throughout Troy? Because we keep getting new developments and, people will say, oh, the trail system's running through here or whatever. But I really don't have any concept of it, and I'd love to see, especially now with the new Civic Center and that being built and connecting to the trail system. Do we have that? Is it on the city site?
I will confer with Mr. Bovenseep, who was here earlier. He's kind of the keeper of the trailway systems. I'll see what we have in terms of the most updated map. And if there's not an updated map, I'll see if we can get one.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Well, all I've got is to let the rest of the commission know that tomorrow night, although some of us will be in a meeting, the others are free to go to the Michigan Association of Planners event on Woodward at the Hammer and Nail. It's a really nice social gathering so that planners and planning commissioners from surrounding areas in Michigan can get together and kind of confer and compare their situations. Who planned it that way? I don't know.
Nothing from me.
Nothing from me.
Thank you. Ms. Zarnecki, anything for you?
No, thank you.
Well, with that, then, we are adjourned.
Okay.